The number one question that you need to answer from this video: should the Raiders go out and sign Jaire Alexander? Type S for sign, type P for pass. My answer is going to be coming up right here on the Raiders Report. I'm Mitchell Renz. You're watching the Raiders Report, and while I was gone this past week for my wedding, the number one question that I was asked: should the Raiders go out and get Jaire Alexander? Well, luckily for you, I'm going to tell you why I think the Raiders would potentially do this move. I'm going to tell you why I don't think that the Raiders would do this move. And then at the very end of the show, I'm going to give you the percentage-based chance that I believe Pete Carroll John Spytek go out and get the former Green Bay Packer. Now, if you live under a rock and you didn't see this news on Monday, the Packers officially decided to move on from Jaire Alexander, and this was an offseason filled with a lot of rumors. Green Bay tried to trade him. I don't think anybody was interested in trading him considering some of the injuries that he had, considering the money that he was looking for. And Green Bay also knew that they were going to be able to save some money. This is from Matt Schneidman. According to Over the Cap, releasing Jaire Alexander frees up about $17.1 million in cap space for the Packers. The reason why I wanted to be able to show you all that is because Jaire was looking for about $16.1 million as like what his base salary was for Green Bay, and he wanted that extra payday. Even though he is a phenomenal corner when he's on the field, and I don't think that you can deny that fact, the Packers said, I would actually rather keep $17.1 million instead of giving that money to Jaire Alexander. So if you're a Raiders fan that types sign, I think you got to think about that number and just think about the overall production that he brings to the table compared to what you're going to have to pay him. Now, getting cut on 6'9", it's not a nice feeling, I guarantee you that. But there's no doubt in my mind that this can be a player that, put him in the right system, it could be pretty fun to watch, because you look at that 2022 season where he played 16 games, 5 interceptions, 14 PBUs. I mean, this is somebody that has been a two-time all-pro type of player. But due to the injuries, due to some of the off-the-field issues, that's why Green Bay moved on from him, right? Like, we talked about Jack Jones getting cut earlier this offseason by the Raiders, and there was a lot of Raiders fans going, man, I can't believe that happened. In the NFL, if you're a headache and a team doesn't value you or think that you're worth what they're paying, this is another example of they will move on from you. But my number one job when I do this show is I always want to be able to talk about news. I always want to talk about Raiders news, NFL news. But I also know this. I'm not going to be the only guy that talks about whether or not the Raiders are going to get Jaire Alexander. And I hope people subscribe to this channel for my analysis and for my opinion, because I'll say this, nobody talks about the Raiders more than I do. Maybe last week they did. In general, nobody talks about the Raiders more than I do. So first here, we'll talk about why the Raiders would go out and get Jaire. To me, and I have a lot of hope in Jakorian Bennett. I got a lot of hope in Darien Porter. I hope Erik Stokes, former teammate of Alexander. But I am also a big believer that if you think that you can improve in the NFL, you try to figure out a way to go out there and you figure out a way to improve. And a fully healthy, fully motivated Jaire Alexander, I don't really know if you can debate it or not. I would say he's the best corner on the Las Vegas Raiders if the silver and black were to go out and if they were to be able to get him. And he's somebody that has shown you that he can tackle. He's somebody that has shown you can get after the football. And one of the things that Jakorian Bennett spoke about when he talked to the media on Tuesday was this year it's all about getting after the football and turning those PBUs into some interceptions and taking the ball away. When he's healthy, Alexander can take the ball away, and I don't really think that you can debate that. Let's go to another reason here of why I think that the Raiders could do it. You have the 7th most money in salary cap space, and with $36.8 million, if the silver and black want to go out and get Jaire, they have the money to do it. I'll be real. I think that what it would cost is going to be somewhere around $15 million. I also said on our live show that I could see him getting a deal very similar to a deal kind of like Stephon Diggs got. I know it's different positions. Honestly, a deal even like a little bit like what Nate Hobbs got, where it's more of a one-year prove-it deal, right? You give Jaire Alexander a 3-year deal. Let's say you give him $60 million, but it's 1 year, $20 million guaranteed. So really, you're only locking him in for that 1 year. I could see Alexander getting a deal like that. I don't know if it's from the Raiders, but I could see a team going out there and giving him that one. Let's go to the next reason why I think it could happen. Pete Carroll. I know that there's been a lot of issues around Alexander, but if there's one head coach that I think can honestly dish a little bit of slice of humble pie to Jaire, which is something that, the former Green Bay Packers cornerback needs. He needs a slice of humble pie. And I think for Pete Carroll, you can look at him and go, hey, I can help you be the best version of yourself. And I think Alexander probably knows that he could be a great mentor. Like Pete would be a great mentor for Alexander, for somebody who's trying to get, I would say, his career back on track. Like, it's going to be a very humbling feeling to know that no NFL team wanted to trade for you and that the team that you were on decided to cut you. So if I'm looking at the baggage that Alexander's bringing, because there's some baggage, let's put him with Pete Carroll, somebody who's been able to develop corners and somebody who's always been able to get the most out of his guys. Because if you can get the most out of Jaire, he's going to be a good player. So I do think the Raiders for Jaire would actually be a better fit than some of the other NFL teams out there. The final thing I'll talk about is Erik Stokes. And when you talk about this organization, you have to discuss connections. You have to talk about relationships. And the number one connection I would say the Raiders have with Jaire is Stokes, who was a mentor to, or mentoree. What's the one when you're underneath somebody? Jaire was the first corner there in Green Bay. The apprentice? I don't know. But Stokes was learning underneath Alexander, and it was actually very well reported that first year that they were together, they were like always together. They were showing up to charity events together, but they were doing a lot together. And I think if Stokes were to look at that coaching staff and go, I vouch for Jaire Alexander, then maybe the Raiders do it. Though, if Stokes goes, that's a guy that you don't want, I'll be real. I don't think the Raiders do it any chance in hell. Coming up next year, though, we're going to get into some just more that I think y'all need to know in regards to Alexander. And I'll just tell you a little bit more just in terms of, like, whether or not will the Raiders do it. You know what I mean? Because I think that everybody is going to say Jaire will help this Raiders team. And I think that that's a very fair statement. If he's 100% healthy, 100% motivated, everybody and their mother, including mine who doesn't watch any football, would say, yes, let's go out and get Jaire Alexander. But the unfortunate part is this isn't Madden. We can't turn injuries off, and that has to be discussed when you talk about the Packers corner. I'll get into that here in just a moment, but if you don't know, Father's Day, it's this Sunday. And I actually had dinner with my dad this Monday. He was in town for my wedding, so I already got this taken care of. But if you're sitting there going, holy shit, I didn't get my dad anything for Father's Day, go to chatsports.com/Raiders sale. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Whether you need a hoodie, whether you need some new golf gear, whether you need some shoes, we have all sorts of stuff. If you're a dad watching this show right now, damn it, get yourself something. Like, I am not really somebody that buys for myself all too often. I'll be real. But when I do buy myself stuff, it's usually Raiders stuff. So if you're kind of in that exact same field, don't be afraid to get yourself some stuff. The sales that they have right now for Father's Day, I'm not kidding you when I say this, are some of the best sales and deals that I've seen. Chatsports.com/Raiders sale. All right, so let's now go to the next part here of why the Raiders wouldn't go out and get Jaire. I think the first reason is the Raiders would have to be very confident in their cornerback room. And when you saw the reports from rookie minicamp, from OTAs, and now very early on at Raiders mandatory minicamp, a lot of the notes that we've seen on these outside corners have been positive. Like Jakorian Bennett, Erik Stokes, Darien Porter are the top three outside corners, and nickel right now is a little bit of up in the air. Like, I don't really think Darnay Holmes, to be honest with you, is the top nickel. It might actually be Thomas Harper, who's been playing a little bit of safety as well. But, Decamerion Richardson, he's been impressing. If the Raiders are confident in Stokes, Bennett, and Porter, I do not see this move happening, or unless they think that Stokes, Porter, or Bennett would be better suited as a starting nickel corner. Let's go to another reason here of why I don't think it would happen, the locker room drama. There's no doubt Alexander's talented, but you don't get released by a football team when you are as good as what Jaire is, when you are drafted by that regime as what Jaire is, when you are a team right now that is trying to go out and win their division. They are competing right now for a Super Bowl. I don't care what anybody says. The NFC North is wide open. So imagine a team that the corner's like one of their biggest needs. You decide to move on from your best player at that position. It's because of the locker room drama, and there was a lot of locker room drama around Alexander. The other reason here that I would say the Raiders probably won't end up making this move, or just why they wouldn't do it, he can't stay healthy. And if you're going to be Pete Carroll and you're going to preach, hey, man, we got to go out there and we got to compete every single day. Hey, we need guys that are going to be able to show up, show out as often as we can. I know health is something that you can never predict, but you can also look at when a guy's able to stay healthy or not, and Alexander has missed a shit ton of games over the past 4 seasons. And, that's the sample size that I would look at. I would look at the last 4 years. I would look at the last 2 seasons. And it's been a steady trajectory of him missing more and more games the longer his season has gone on. I mean, he was great his first 3 years. Was out there playing, was getting his reps in. In 2021, missed 13 games. In 2022, was able to stay healthy and play. But from 2023, 2024, I mean, y'all, we're talking about over the past 4 seasons, 34 games missed the last 4 years. That is a ridiculous amount of games. I mean, we're talking about an average of 8 games per season. For a dude that wants to make the amount of money that he's making, that's a tough pill to swallow, I think, for any organization, especially with an organization that, doesn't really truly know this guy from top to bottom, on top of the fact that there is locker room drama, on top of the fact that the Raiders are confident in their cornerback room. Let's keep it moving here on the Raiders report of why the Raiders wouldn't go out and sign Jaire. It's been very well documented that he is a selfish player. And when you're bringing in team captains, when you're bringing in players that it's all about the team, and you've heard players talk about it, coaches talk about it. Colt Miller spoke about it, on Tuesday, that Pete's not only out there coaching up the players and getting them to go out there and compete, he's also teaching the coaches of what he wants them to do. And one of the number one things that this team wants is they want that team atmosphere. They don't want one guy that thinks that he's better than everybody else. They don't want one guy that thinks that he's bigger than the team. And I know that because you got guys like Colt Miller, Jacoby Myers who are showing up to non-mandatory things, guys that want contract extensions, and they're showing up. Like Jaire Alexander wants to get paid after not playing, essentially, the last 2 seasons. So it's been very well documented that he is a selfish guy, and I'll always say this. I cover the Raiders better than anybody I think that breathes earth, and maybe that's an unfair thing to say, but, if you're not confident in what you do, then why are you doing it? But one of the things that I'll always look at when a situation like this unfolds is how is it reported by other people? And how is it being talked about by people that follow the Green Bay Packers? And our Packers guy here at Chat Sports said, you got to look at this tweet because I think it, pays dividends to Jaire. So when Jaire Alexander, you got to look at the date. This is all the way back on January 13th. When Jaire Alexander was asked to speak with the media at locker room cleanout, he declined, saying he doesn't even know if he's going to be here next year, said he didn't have anything good to say, so definitely wasn't going to talk. This also led up for a while of, this was a bad breakup between Green Bay, and it was a bad breakup between Jaire. And when you listen to a lot of the reporters talk about Alexander, he was a head case. He was a major headache. And for a team that's trying to build this, going in the right direction, you don't need any headaches. Quite frankly, I don't want there to be any off-the-field drama. For the first time since covering this team, I mean this. I don't want any off-the-field drama. So I think now we get to a point where it's like, okay, what is the likelihood that the Raiders go out and they get Jaire Alexander? To me, I'm going to give this one only one just win, baby, and I'm going to say that there is a 2% chance, maybe 2% chance, that the Raiders go out and they get him. And the reason why that I'm saying that it's very unlikely is because of all the reasons that I just outlined right there for you. If a team is willing to move on from Jaire Alexander, that probably means that there was a lot of other shit going down because he's way too talented to be cut. We all know that. But I also am just talking about this from a Raiders standpoint because I believe other teams will pay him more. Pete Carroll and John Spytek, when I say locker room drama, I know they're confident in their corners. Guy can't stay healthy and he's selfish. That doesn't sound like a player that this organization, this regime, is going to go out and they're going to pay a lot of money to. And I don't think anybody really disagrees with that statement. But I do think that there will be some teams that are like, we're a cornerback away from being a Super Bowl caliber team that might go out and they try to go out and get this guy. So I believe there will be another team that ends up paying more. So I want to know from all of y'all, where do you think Jaire Alexander plays football this upcoming season? And there was a report from Josina Anderson that said that 6 teams apparently have called or are interested in the former Green Bay Packers corner. And I'll kind of illustrate who I think that those 6 teams are here in just a moment. But at the end of the day, if I'm a team and I'm looking at this situation, there are a bunch of teams that I think could go out and potentially make a swing here at Alexander. The teams that I think are the most likely are the Rams, the Eagles, and the Vikings, though. Watch out for Carolina and watch out for the Atlanta Falcons. Those have been 2 sneaky teams that have been at least thrown out there and been reported. Do I think that the Raiders should at least pick up the phone and give Jaire a call? Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you don't pick up the phone and call a player that is as talented as what Alexander is, then I don't think that you're just doing the right things as an organization. But if it was up to me, should the Raiders go out and get Jaire Alexander? I'm going to say no. Like, I don't want the Raiders to go out and do it. Now, if they did it, would I be upset? Absolutely not. If the Raiders went out and did it, I would sit up here and I'd go, that means Pete Carroll is confident that he can make the most out of Jaire Alexander. And if Pete Carroll's confident in his ability, well, then guess what? I'm going to be confident in his ability as well. I just think that you could allocate money by paying Colton, allocate money by paying Jacoby, and you could go out and do other things, find other moves that make your team better. Not that Jaire wouldn't do it, but I also think the Raiders are a lot more confident in their outside corners, which is why I think it's very unlikely that the Raiders go out and sign Jaire Alexander.